Chapter 43. Happiest of Days. Little Wing groaned from her position on her parents' sofa, on her back with her various limbs splayed in whatever direction they felt like. Her parents sat in armchairs across from her, while Misty Gus sat near the sofa to just softly stroke Little Wing's mane in comfort. They had sat in near silence for Celestia knows how long, though the source of Little Wing's discomfort was all too clear. She was due any day now, after all. Her greatly expanded womb certainly supported this fact, and for Little Wing, that due date could not have come soon enough.
Feels like I'm carrying the biggest potato ever grown, spliced with iron,
Little Wing moaned, getting a titter from the others at her unique comparison.
What? I mean it! This will be my punishment in Tartarus. I know, dear. I've been through it as well.
Windy Whistles pointed out.
But you've been very brave so far. Oh, blah.
Little Wing just responded, rolling her eyes.
I mean it,
Windy continued.
It's not the easiest job carrying a foal, but it is a rewarding one. Any day now you'll get to meet the baby and you'll see. I blame Silver Breeze,
Little Wing continued, and they had to wonder if she was even listening to her mother.
I bet he was a fat baby, and that gene's been passed on. I suppose I'm talking to a brick wall then,
Windy muttered with a pout. No, dear. You remember when you were with Dashi? Bo lightly reminded his wife. I'd never been so scared in my entire life. Windy's pout increased.
Not helping. She'll be fine,
Misty Gus cooed over Little Wing.
She's just as excited to be a mom as I am, aren't you?
Despite her foul mood, Little Wing looked up and offered her special sun pony a small smile.
Yes, honey, I am.
So you're still not going to find out the gender? Bo inquired.
It's due any day, so it's a bit late now,
Little Wing deadpanned.
And we want it to be a surprise,
Misty added in.
We've talked about Valley and cult names. I think we've nailed down one for each, unless we wind up changing our minds. I don't know, I've still got a few suggestions,
Windy proclaimed enthusiastically.
More?
Little Wing said in disbelief.
The last load you gave us was practically a novel. Oh, don't be dramatic,
Windy dismissed.
It was only 12 pages.
And that was the shortened version, Bo claimed. I think we have the rest still lying around somewhere.
Thanks, but we'll sleep on it,
Misty softly refused.
For now, though, we're pretty set in our choices. Any sneak peeks?
Windy asked hopefully.
Nope.
The older mare drooped.
Oh, drat. Don't worry, Mum. Any day now you'll get to meet the baby and you'll see.
Little Wing parroted with a smirk.
And I think you're being very brave about it. Oh, hush you.
Little Wing just chuckled.
What goes around comes around.
The mare's amusement was cut off short, however, when she winced from a particularly volatile kick her foal saw fit to administer.
Ouch. I guess my grandfall is on my side,
Windy teased her daughter.
Please don't encourage the demon spawn.
Doesn't that make you the demon? Bo remarked with a small laugh.
I'm getting there. You're not a demon, Wing.
Misty chatted with a bop on her wife's nose, which crumpled up in a little annoyance.
What you are is dramatic. Yeah, well, if we ever have a second, you're doing the carrying next time.
Little Wing decided as she looked directly at her wife's amused face, returning the boop in great vengeance.
And I'll be sure to remind you all about this.
Misty leaned in with a coy grin.
Is that a challenge?
Little Wing returned that very grin.
Maybe.
The light gray mare chuckled.
Well, let's get through one first, yeah? You're probably right.
Little Wing conceded, finally sitting up properly and allowing Misty Gus to settle down on the sofa next to her. She put a protective hoof on her stomach, her mood rising a bit.
And with the trouble the foal's already given me, just wait till they're flying and running around. Well, it's a good thing our resident Wonderbolt has the speed to catch them,
Misty remarked.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be like you with Dash and you'll inspire the kid to join up. Yeah.
Little Wing mused.
And I'm already thinking up the many laps I'll make them do for the many months of hell they're putting me through.
Or just bill them the rent they owe you, Bo Hothoof joked. Little Wing gave him the briefest of bemused looks before rolling her eyes and moving on. So, speaking of them, have you heard from the other Wonderbolts of late? Bo then inquired. I know you miss flying with them.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to coming off of maternity leave. My wings are getting dusty,
Little Wing responded, giving her wings a quick stretch and demonstration.
Of course. Scooch checks in quite often, and Soaring does whenever Dash does. The captain... Well, she's always in hardcore training mode every time she does. Only because it makes you squirm,
Misty added in.
Though she is treating the foal like her most prized future recruit.
Bo chuckled before asking. And how's the reservist they've got filling in for you doing? Heard much about that? Little Wing considered for a moment.
From what I've heard, they...
Little Wing suddenly let out a sharp gasp, and she grasped her stomach in shock. Misty was holding on to her in an instant, and all faces looked towards her with worry. A few moments passed by in silence before Little Wing waved a hoof to signal that she was all right.
Are you okay, dear?
Wendy asked tenderly.
Yeah. That was just weird.
Little Wing nearly doubled over as the pain returned, and suddenly began feeling like she had wet herself. A rather odd sensation, but one completely overridden by the soul-crushing pain taking over her body.
Oh my...
Misty whimpered suddenly as she began to tremble.
What is it? What is it?
Little Wing asked through clenched teeth, taking in deep breaths.
I think it's starting,
Misty shouted, shooting up off the sofa.
Her water's broke!
What? Every pony else, including Little Wing, all shouted at once. Hospital! Bo stammered out in a mild panic. We should go, right now!
Yeah! I gathered that!
Little Wing said as she unsteadily got to her hooves. She could still at least walk, but by Celestia she was not enjoying herself at that moment.
Come on,
Misty cooed as she began to lead her wife away, bearing her own sudden onset of terror and anxiety.
You did want it to happen soon.
Little Wing's parents followed close behind. But while Bo looked about ready to faint, by great contrast there was a noticeable spring in Windy Whistle's step.
Oh, this is going to be the best, Mom!
Little Wing shouted in pain and completely uncontrolled terror from the fact that she was about to have a baby.
Not now!
Cloudsdale General Hospital. The pain had decidedly not abated after the family's panicked rush to the hospital, and if anything was progressively getting worse each passing second. The moment they had arrived, Little Wing had been admitted and seen to by a sizable team of doctors and midwives as she was carted off for all sorts of last-minute medical checks and preparations. It was all a mad flurry that seemed to both pass by in an instant and yet go on for several millennia, which did little to alleviate the mare's extreme hormone and pain-induced aggravation, nor the nail-biting fear the rest of them were feeling during the insanity. And not only did they have to deal with everything going on in the hospital around them, they also now had the arduous task of sending out messages to every pony else about what was going on. They did their best to do just that, even as the hours ticked on by and the tension remained as constant as ever. Since Rainbow Dash and Scootaloo were all the way out in Ponyville, it would likely take them some time to arrive. They were also doing their best to get in touch with Silverbreeze to tell him of the foal's impending arrival, though he seemingly wasn't home. Not that they were going to stop until he'd been informed, however, even if they had to track him down the old-fashioned way. if the old-fashioned way was convincing the Wonderbolts to locate him for a surprise aerial extraction. Better to leave that as a last resort. More hours passed on by, until the medical ponies finally announced that Little Wing was undergoing the final stages of labor in the delivery room, and her family had all been urged to wait patiently in the waiting room. Well, patiently was a strong word. Misty half cried in her seat, being patted on the back by windy whistles. Bo was currently absent from the room, leaving the two mares alone.
She's okay, right? She is okay, right? Yes, dear, she's fine.
Windy replied softly.
This is all normal. Why, just under a year ago, I was waiting here for little Sky Dancer. Yeah, I guess.
They had been doing this routine of worry and comfort since the final delivery began. And, to be honest, Windy knew all too well that the process never got any less terrifying. Not that she would tell that to Misty Gus during a time like this. That would not go down well. So the older mare just continued to pat her back as soothingly as possible. And that was probably all that was keeping Misty from truly freaking out.
This is probably what Little Wing felt like when waiting for her results from the final Wonderbolts exam, huh?
Misty noted with a half-hearted chuckle. Windy just smiled and nodded in response, though internally was raving about how much worse this truly was compared to that. Yeah, smiling and nodding was definitely more productive. I got him! Bo suddenly announced as he burst into the waiting room, right past a rather annoyed-looking nurse. The mares gave him blank looks. Silverbreeze, he elaborated. He's apparently on his way now.
Oh, thank goodness for that,
Windy said while breathing a sigh of relief.
Hopefully Violet and they should be any minute too. Yeah.
Misty muttered from her seat, taking in further deep breaths.
Would you like me to get you a book to pass the time?
Windy suggested.
I do know you enjoy a good read. No, thanks.
Misty turned her head down.
I don't think I could concentrate on a book right now. Oh, of course, dear, I understand.
It was then that Bo Hothoof looked towards the door, a grimace crossing his face as he started to prance in place. Well, I can't blame her. This is taking too long. Misty's eyes widened.
What do you mean too long?
Misty looked at her husband with what could only be described as a shooty look. He stopped immediately, trying to shove his panic down a little as he gave them both an apologetic and highly sheepish smile.
Never mind him. He's just nervous,
Windy dismissed, continuing her usual back-petting as the younger mare's coat somehow seemed to go from its light gray to a pale white. And then, mercifully, the door opened, and a foal's wails could be heard inside. If the doctor said anything, Misty Gus didn't hear it, as her vision and other senses all tunneled into that room. As if on autopilot, she got up from her seat and began to slowly trot towards the threshold into the delivery room. Windy might have said something supportive perhaps, but it was lost on Misty as she finally emerged into the room. The foal quieted down as Little Wing began to hum a quiet lullaby to it, rocking the child slowly and steadily in her forehoofs. The foal gave a whimper, then a small hiccup, before seemingly drifting off to sleep. Little Wing looked up, seeing her wife standing dumbstruck at the end of the bed. The medical staff were piling out to give the couple some space, though her parents were peeking in through the doorway.
Hey,
Little Wing tiredly greeted.
About that demon spawn.
That comment seemed to knock Misty Gus from her stupor, and she just shook her head in bemusement as she rounded the bed and sat herself down beside Little Wing and their new son. The foal was a Pegasus colt. He had a dark brown mane and tail, dark enough that it was very nearly a clear black rather than a brown. Meanwhile, his coat was only the slightest bit darker than Little Wing's, and even shared the eye color of his mother. A perfect little colt in their eyes. He snored lightly, and on inspection, he had no human aspects to give away his unusual ancestry. Neither a horn, a potential they'd considered when thinking how Little Wing's current body was formed. Just a little baby Pegasus, sleeping soundly in his mother's grasp.
Hi there, little Gale.